Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Moments Peace. I'm Mike with my lovely wife, Nereida, and we are joined today by a special guest, Randy Pratt, who is the president of New Leaf Publishing Group and MasterBooks, of which you've probably heard us rave quite a bit lately. He is with us today, and we are so excited to have him here. Randy, welcome to the Moments Peace podcast.
Hey, guys. It's awesome to be with you. What a blessing.
Yeah, awesome. So if you could just start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, what your role is at MasterBooks, at New Leaf, and also a little bit about your family.
Yeah. Well, Randy Pratt. I am married to Kristen Pratt. We've been married for, 34, 35 years. We have 9 kids. We've launched 7 kids. We've been involved in homeschooling for well over 25 years, almost 30 years. Before that, I was principal of a private school, taught in a private school, and we came to New Leaf Publishing Group in 2015. I came as a VP of sales and marketing. Kristen had already been working with the press here as kind of a curriculum and education consultant. Mm-hmm. And we've been very blessed to be part of the ministry and what the Lord has been doing here with MasterBooks curriculum and building kind of a homeschool movement within the movement. Mm-hmm. And so right now I function as president, which is really just making sure that everything is moving forward smoothly and continuing to grow and serving the mission, which is to impact the kingdom.
Very cool. Very cool. Yes, we have done several videos about MasterBooks curriculum. Nereida is, as you would say, a fangirl, just a raving fan of MasterBooks. We've awesome. Gone to the Teach Them Diligently conference where we've met you several times. And every time we've gone, she is grabbing people like she's got a fishing line. She's hooking people, taking them to the MasterBooks booth, saying, you've got to use MasterBooks. You've got to use MasterBooks. Like she's just the raving fan. So this is her fangirl moment today.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Yeah. So when I told her, I was like, maybe
we'll
just do it.
You guys as well. Just so you know, MasterBooks, we've recognized how
cool.
How sold out you are.
Very cool.
For MasterBooks, but I think more importantly, sold out for the kingdom.
Amen. So I originally had said, why don't I do an interview with Randy? It'd be like a dad to dad talking about fatherhood, which is what I really want to focus in on today. And she was like, you cannot let me not be on this podcast. I've got to be there. I've got to be there. I was like, okay, sure. I cannot argue with
please.
That. You did say please. Yeah. So I know there's a lot we could talk about, but I wanted to dial in on specifically fatherhood. It feels like today fatherhood is in a decline. It is under attack. Fathers in the home affects everything in culture. It is the bedrock of civilization, as you well know, and is what causes people to flourish. And when fatherhood and family is destroyed, it seems like that's the enemy's target. He's been using the same tactics for thousands of years on human beings of destroy the father, destroy the home, and you can destroy the culture. And so I just wanted you to speak on what you feel MasterBooks' place is to restoring fatherhood, especially in homeschool families, and also what you've learned as a father over, you said 30 plus years. You've got 9 kids, you've got battle scars, you've got lessons you can teach us. So maybe just start off dialing into that topic and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, that's a big question. As far as MasterBooks goes, I think what the MasterBooks brand offers the most for families is biblical authority and really being able to know that the Bible is true, right? If I can believe that Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth is true, then I can pretty much believe that he loved us so much that he sent his only begotten son. If I don't believe the first chapter, I'm not going to believe any of the chapters that follow. And I think MasterBooks really goes out of their way to do that. We're also very conscious about what's in the curriculum. So, we offer a faith builder guarantee that if the faith of your child doesn't grow, we refund your money. I've been doing this now for a number of years. We haven't given any refunds because I'm pretty confident that when I point to the truth of God's word and you really look at it through that framework, your faith is going to grow, right? And so I think that that's one of the tools that we give the most. And then understanding Genesis 1-15, that he created them, male and female. He created the institution of husbands and wives, and he creates marriage. And even very important is he says that we're to leave the authority of our father and mother and to cleave to our wife. And that's like a big component that's gone. I used to perform wedding ceremonies, and I would get to the place where the father walks the bride down the aisle and you say, who gives this woman to be wedded to this man? Um, I would do another check, and I would look at the mother of the son and the father and say, do you understand also he's leaving your authority to cleave to this woman? And
Yeah.
because that's what the Bible is saying, it's to the man, you're to leave the authority of your father and mother and to be responsible for your family and to
Yeah.
lead. So I think male leadership is has been so twisted in so many ways. And for me, the older I get, male leadership is more about serving. It's more about coaching. It's more about loving. It has far less to do with I'm the boss than it does me laying my life down to elevate those that I love and serve.
Right. I've heard it said, leading by authority, you can only get people to go so far, but when you lead by example, you're leading alongside of them or serving alongside of them, that you get
It's
people's
good.
real buy-in. So,
Yeah.
very cool. So, what's been your journey, or what's some important lessons that you've learned? I mean, your oldest you got 9 kids. You said you've sent out 7 of them. So congratulations on firing out those arrows. How old is your oldest? And,
Oh my goodness. I got to make sure I get the dates right. Right. So
right. Yeah. Well, yeah.
she was born in 1990. So I'm going to
Okay.
say she's
We can do the
going
math.
on
Yeah.
34. Yeah. She'll be going on 34.
Okay, cool. So 34, and then how old's your youngest?
14.
14. So 20-year. Okay, you got us beat by 10 years. Our oldest is 20 and our youngest is 9. So we have like a
Okay.
10-year span of popping out kids. You guys are just more fruitful and more multiplying. So that's cool. But as far as, I mean, you have a kid that's 34. I mean, when you first sent, it's a she, right?
Yep. Carrie Lindquist, actually, who's one of the authors at MasterBooks.
Oh, right on. Cool. Okay. So when you first launched her out when she was however old, I mean, compared to now, what are some lessons you've learned and stuff you would have done differently as far as launching out adult children?
Wow. So launching, some people laugh at me when I say this, but launching is a birthing process. And all through their, you can compare it basically to the birthing, right? There's the preparation, there's, I felt the baby move, to, okay, I'm feeling some contractions. There's movement here. I'm beginning to feel some pain. Oh, baby, why are you kicking my ribs? It sounds like I've had a baby. I haven't, but I've been alongside of someone who did.
Oh, yeah.
The contractions are starting to happen, right? Labor is intensifying. The baby's getting more comfortable. The baby's running out of room. Maybe, all of these things begin to happen. And then the birthing process starts. And we kind of think that as our kids get older in the teen years, that's all normal, what we experience. And then we go through this birthing process. That birthing process can be very painful. And I think we have to see it as a process of them actually birthing into adulthood.
Yeah.
And know that the contractions are not in vain, right? Even what are they called? Braxton Hicks contractions,
right?
Are preparing for the actual delivery event. All of these little rubs and bumps and grinds and contractions are preparing for the birthing process.
Yep.
Kristen, my wife, had 8 physical births, and every one of those births were different. Some kids just boom, one of my sons came out. I caught him because the doctor didn't get there in time. I was like, hands out. Others were like, right emergency C-section because the baby's fighting not to come out. And so that one size doesn't fit all. And I really feel that we have to be asking the Lord for wisdom with each of our children that are launched into adulthood. And then it's as terrifying, those first few moments of their launch, as a birth. Is the baby breathing? Is everything okay? What's the APGAR score? All of our launches are the same. They've been out for 6 months. It's an APGAR score of 3. We need a med team in here. Emergency.
He's not breathing financially. Yeah, he's broke. Oh no.
Yeah. Yes. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. All of that we've planted in them, they get out and they may feel the need to kind of test the atmosphere, so to speak. So in that regards, I think it's not easy. But yet now that we have, we launched number 7 this week, and again, terrifying process. But as I see my older kids, um, like just rocking life, it's awesome. But
Mm-hmm.
you almost have to just relax a little bit, because
Yeah.
you can fight this, you can try to control it, but it's like, if you're one of my sons, his wife gave birth in an apartment, and they thought they had plenty of time to get to the hospital, but when the contraction started and that baby was ready to come, the baby came,
Mm-hmm.
and there was nothing they were going to do to stop it, right?
Right.
And the more they tried to stop it, the more damage they were going to do to both the mother and the child. And I think that
Right.
that's launching as well. When it's time, you feel it, you know it's happening, and you just have to kind of go with it and pray and hope for the best.
Wow, that's great. That is impactful, because we are on the brink of launching out our first, and then our second is graduating this year. And I think about, we've gone through the birthing thing. I mean, I physically didn't, obviously, but we've gone through the pregnancy, birth, newborn stage 6 times, and it was painful. And I always look back and say, well, I'm so glad that's over with. But now what you're saying is I have to look forward to that 6 more times, basically. I have to go through
Yeah,
that painful, and I'm already feeling it. Like, I'm feeling the Braxton Hicks of, we're not always together each night. Sometimes our daughter's working on a certain evening. We're not doing family devotions, or we go to the park or the gym and she's not there. And it's that warming up to the idea. I mean, she still lives with us, but we know that,
yeah,
not too long from now, she'll be launched out on her own. So,
Well, and she's talking about getting married next year. And so why does that one feel harder than graduation? like, I don't,
yeah,
like, I mean, it's so exciting, but then it's like so sad at the same time. And
yeah.
it's
it
weird
is.
to see the siblings sad, of like, they're excited, but then they're so sad too. Cause I'm like, that means she's not going to be here at all. That means,
Mm-hmm.
so can you talk a little bit about that transition? Like, is
Yeah.
it harder with guys than it is with girls as a dad?
Um, in my experience, it's harder as a dad to let go of your girls initially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brittany, my daughter, I would be like, yeah, when you were a little girl, we'd be holding hands and walking, and you were just so in love with daddy. And then all of a sudden, one day, my hand is swinging and your hand is gone, and you're holding some creep's hand. And,
Right.
and now I'm supposed to like be happy about this, right? I'm supposed to
Right.
walk you down the aisle and give you to this creep when, you know,
Right.
that you're taking a piece of my heart, right?
Right. Right.
Um, Nice thing about girls is they tend to stay closer.
Yeah.
Boys tend to not, like, they tend to head towards the daughter-in-law's
Mm-hmm.
family a little bit more, and so the girls have stayed close, and so I appreciate that now
Yeah.
as I see it, and I'm so blessed. I have 3 son-in-laws that I absolutely love and adore, and um, so the Lord has blessed me that I gained 3 awesome sons in the process,
Mm-hmm.
and they take awesome care of my daughters.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that helped me a lot as a dad, my second, was just the birthing process was brutal. And I recognized my oldest was like, she stayed under our covering. She was like, I submit to your authority as my parents, until she got married. And it was like, this is so easy. I can do this
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And then the second came, and he was just fighting and fighting. And we kind of had a night where we just sat down and I said, from this point, I'm releasing you into adulthood, right? I can't carry the weight anymore of the decisions you make. And you're needing to go out and experience this. So I'm blessing you to be an adult. And from this point forward, you stand accountable to the Lord for all that you do. And the moment of my being your daddy is over. I'm your dad and I'm your father, and I'll always be here for you. But the spiritual covering, so to speak, that I've held, I just can't carry the weight of that anymore. I can't sleep at night when I know that I can't affect your decisions, but I feel accountable for it.
Right.
And almost every one of my kids since then, as we've launched, we've had this same conversation where it's obvious that the birthing moment is had. We're cutting the umbilical cord, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm releasing you, that you will stand now before the Lord accountable, and I can say I did the best I could, or tried with everything I had to do a good job.
Yeah.
That's been helpful for them, because they also now realize that when they stand accountable for the Lord, I'm not going to take the heat for anything that happens from this moment forward. This is on you. And
Right.
I'm still, I'll take responsibility for everything up to that point, but from this point forward, it's on you. And then it helps me because I also have now kind of released that and blessed them to step into life.
Right. Which helps them kind of restore their sense of ownership of their decisions and their
Yes.
dignity, and they're standing on their own 2 feet. And then if they fall, it's on them, and they can't blame, mom or dad for it.
So that
Right.
is one of the questions our one of our friends had was, how would you bridge keeping an open relationship with your older child that you've like launched out, but not condoning their sin for the sake of their own spiritual walk, their child who's may be living a life of sin, and then the effects on the siblings that are younger, that are also, teenagers.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it's a changing answer for me. The more kids I have, I do think that there's a moment where when they step out, they know how they've been raised, they know the values we have, they know what we hold to, and all of that. Um, I have influence, but I have a lot less input, so to speak, into my kids' life as they've gotten older. So I think it's important that you keep the door open. I'm a coach to my kids. Like, I'm always happy to give them advice if they ask, or to coach them. There is also brand Randy, which is if there are certain lines that are going to be crossed that come into my realm or maybe may affect my younger children, that you're going to see the Randy you knew growing up as my child, right? Because if I don't, who am I? Like, there's an expectation. I have to stand and deliver for this. But when it comes to their own life and the decisions they make, it may break my heart, but I really no longer have control over that, And that's kind of, isn't that how we learn also the Father's heart? Like, he gives us, we have free will, and he loves us, and he wants the best for us. He explains all the blessings and the curses of what happens through obedience and disobedience, and he makes provision for us, everything. But then when we disobey, he's still there for us, but he's not necessarily like trying to tell us, you stop that now. It doesn't, it's a very gentle coaching. I learn more about the Father's heart through my children than anything else.
Yeah. And I feel like the lessons I've learned in life have been stronger when I've made a mistake and had to deal with the consequences of it, versus just I was sheltered from the consequences of my actions. So, yeah, and I received that. That's good. I had a question for you about, what do you think is, I'm going to go through, we got like 5 or 6 questions here. So it'll be maybe more of a lightning round. You can give some shorter, longer answers, however you see fit. But what do you think is one of the most important habits that Christian fathers need to have today to create that sense of spiritual covering?
I would say probably putting your phone and your technology down and being present. I think that's, if there's a habit right now, it's the distraction that everybody has. And one of the biggest challenges I would say I have is not, as my kids, the moment that they start talking to me, but all of a sudden my brain says, I need to make sure I didn't get an email, or a notification just came up. So that being present, I think, is important. I think there's the obvious of, we get what we lead, and staying connected to the Lord, and showing by example, and all of that. But I do think technology and screens are definitely becoming an issue that is hurting families and fathers.
It's really created and designed by the people that created them to be addicting, to create those dopamine hits when somebody likes something we do, and to always be a distraction, of fear of missing out. Well, what if, like you said, what if I get that email and it's that important message, and if I don't get it, then the deal isn't closed, and the family's going to starve because I'm just a lazy bum and I have to look at my phone. Otherwise, my children will starve. And there's this weird rationalization you do. And it's like, I read a book recently. You might want to check it out. It's really good, by a guy named John Mark Comer. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And he talks about,
familiar with that.
It's a really good book. And I actually read it like cover to cover. I know sometimes I'm ADD and I only get like 3/4 of the way through a book. And this one I read all the way to the end. It's very nicely formatted and minimalistic. But he talks about doing digital fasts and getting away from technology, because if you look at the way that like Jesus lived. He had so much slow time in his life, so much time alone and away and quiet and still. And we're in a fast paced world now where everything's go, 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 go. And
Yep.
I think that's a great, great tip you gave us for, turning off the phone. Now you mentioned the thing, you said the quote, you get what you lead.
And
And
you
you
tolerate.
teach what you tolerate. So Nereida has loved those two quotes you've
It
said.
has been life
You
changing.
need to put it on a
Like,
shirt or something,
I know. Like, okay, so the you get what you lead has sometimes gotten me out of bed. I'm like, if I don't want these kids sleeping in, I can't sleep in. I got to get out.
Yeah.
If I'm like, I'm setting the tone here. Like, what results do I want and how am I going to lead so that I can see those fruits come back? And then the teach what you tolerate. I don't know if you shared it in a live, like a long time ago, maybe more in the contents of like like you were asking a mom's in a toddler kind of situation. But I was like, that is so true. Even like for teens, like
Yep.
if I'm just going to be like, if I want them to read books, then maybe they should see me reading books. Or if I'm going to go outside, or if I let this attitude keep going on, then this younger one's going to think like they can talk to me that way because of him. So I'm teaching them that it's okay. So I need to assume responsibility here and be like, let's get back to, you're not going to talk to me that way, so that
Right.
they don't talk to me that way. So how were those birthed? Because those are like, I think we've even did a video when we did about MasterBooks and apologetics, like how this like slogan were like totally for me. And like, I love them. And now my kids know them. They also talk about like the reset. We're pressing the reset button, guys, so there's like a few things. I mean, you've been very influential in our home because the lives are so, I've homeschooled 17 years and like it's like every Thursday. And, I enjoyed it Tuesdays too, when that was going on. It's like a shot in the arm, even for someone who's like in it and loves it and in it for the long haul. It's like I can get away and breathe and have a special little drink and just hear you rant or encourage. And it's just awesome because I'm like, all right, these are my people, like the same like-mindedness here. And it's encouraging because I'm like, yeah, I can't teach them that. I can't tolerate that. And, and now I'm in the stage of my life where I'm like, boundaries, and somebody's going to know you to go paint the fence. So like, can you talk a little bit about how those were birthed?
And also for those who don't know, like where you're going live on the regular that she was just talking about.
So MasterBooks has an app. If you go to the app stores, there's a MasterBooks app. And Thursdays at 3:00 Central Standard Time, I do a post on teaching tips. And it's really, I just answer questions and do it from a perspective of, I'm a dad who's been in this for 34 years. Kristen and I have been together since I was 14. She was 13. There are so many mistakes that I've made that if I could help a younger dad not make those mistakes, and sometimes it's just nice to hear somebody else give insight, and then you eat the meat, spit out the bones. But I can take kind of something that could help make a difference in a family's life. So I tend to like quotes and guiding principles, so to speak. And so things like you teach what you tolerate. I was a project manager and had dealt with a lot of different crews, and teach what you tolerate came out of a project management course. But it was like, but that's, as a parent, that's exactly right. If I tolerate this amount of behavior, that's really what I've taught. We don't, I think when we look at tolerate, it doesn't even have to be harsh. It's just checking it when it happens very quickly so that it doesn't become the norm, and that they see that you check it. You get what you lead was a hard one because I was pastoring a church. I was extremely frustrated with the growth of the church, extremely frustrated with the engagement of people in the church. And one day the Holy Spirit just really pointed out that this church is never going to grow beyond you. And you are the reason the church is where it is. You've capped the church because, you want all this emotion, you want all this depth and all of that, but that's not how you lead. That's not who you are. And so when I started really taking that on and adapting it to every situation in life, like when I look at my kids and I get what I lead. And so if I don't like what I'm seeing, generally it's because I'm doing a lousy job of leading and need to step up my game, and also need to go there myself. Like you say, how do I expect them to get up and get going with the day if I'm not doing that? And then, also the people who lead me, what limitations are there above me because they've only led to a certain level. And so I think that's another aspect it's not just as a leader, but also as a follower, that I examine the leaders above me and say, do I have limitations on my life because I place myself under this leadership, and I'm only going to hit that example? And I don't think we often look at that. I think, we often don't see our leaders as our limit, but that's true as well.
Yep.
That's good.
That's very good. Yep. Yeah. And project management, raising kids is definitely a project.
It is.
So it's a lot of carryover.
I've learned so much though from my kids. My kids are my best friends, and there's just things you learn, like how to go into a restaurant with 9 kids and order 30 hamburgers and 15 fries. Like it's
just throw them all up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
like ninja stars.
Back in the dollar menu days, I was thankful I was raising kids in dollar menu days when you could get a double cheeseburger for $1.
Those were the days.
Yeah. So, and there's nothing more satisfying than sending your kid in and making them order. We have hot dogs in New York that we like, and we literally get about, I think it's 60 hot dogs when they go in. And so to watch them have to go in and order 60 hot dogs is the funniest thing in my life. So.
Oh, you need footage of that. You need to share that. It's like in the side, just videotaping. Yes. I want 30 hot dogs. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
We always get callbacks like, "Is this a legit order?"
Yeah, like are you serious?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to this question next. Well, let's go to this one. What would you tell your younger self? Go back to when you first had your first kid and you had no idea what was on the horizon of what parenthood would be like for the next 34 years. What would you go back and tell younger Randy Pratt?
Well, yeah, answer it as in the form of like dad and then also like husband. I think that would be a neat perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With dad, I think it's more the philosophy. I would give myself the framework of try to be a coach. Try to approach this as a mindset of not as their boss, but as coach. So, we're all on this journey together. It all has a start place and it has the same end, right? Mm-hmm. I've got 20, 30 years on my kids. That's it. I'm in this journey too. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. And when I approach it that way, it's different. With my older 3, I was definitely much more harsh. I was much more, because I'm the boss, you're going to do it my way. You're going to respect me. If you didn't do something, I saw it as an offense, and I would not allow that. I was in a Answers in Genesis conference once, and Todd Friel was there, and Todd said, your kids are little sinners just like you. And it was like it downloaded files of information of, oh my goodness, they are little sinners just like me. And who am I to judge them when, as a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, I still am working through all of my issues. And so as a dad, I think it's that framework of let's be more of a coach and lead from that aspect than as the boss, if that makes sense.
Yeah, coming alongside them to accomplish the same goal of getting sin out of your life and walking with the Lord.
Yes.
I know recently we had an issue. I had an issue with one of my sons doing something that I would do. He got angry and he raised his voice. And in that moment, I didn't raise my voice. I came up to him and I said, is that really the kind of person you want to be? In a very calm way.
Do you really want to act like Dad?
Yeah, is that really what you want to do? Because he's like, well, I just saw you do that like 2 days ago. So I'm like, yeah, but that's besides the point. Right now, is that really who you want to be? And like, consider who you were. And that was the Holy Spirit, because everything in me wanted to just yell louder but that's not the answer. And it's every day, day by day.
My 14-year-old counsels me all the time. I mean, my kids are so much more mature than I am. The culture really is growth. and I want to give each other room for growth, not perfection, right? So if they see me do something that's harmful, I want them to call me on it, because they see it all the time. And and then, we have that. So I'm trying not to have an ego with them, because sometimes they've helped me be so much more emotionally intelligent than I am on my own. And so I think that's been valuable. One of the other, awesome. So you asked, the other question was, what would I, as a husband, how would I relate that as a husband?
Tell your younger self. Yeah.
And that, I think that is the aspect as well. When Kristen and I first got married, I came into marriage as a may the best man win. I'm going to bring everything, and I expect you to bring everything. May the best man win. And I ran over her a lot, and in the early stages, I would kind of get my way, and then after 20 or 30 years of that, a lot of resentment builds up, and a lot of hurt builds up from that. And so I've spent a lot of time evaluating that aspect, and I really do think what I would say to my younger self is to really do everything you can to build up and serve the other person, without expectation that they owe you anything. Oftentimes we come into a marriage and say, well, because you're my wife, you have to submit to me. Submission is a gift, right? And if I demand that, it's not submission. I mean, that's like slavery. And so
right.
For me, it was, you don't owe me something. Because I do the dishes tonight doesn't mean that I expect a special hug or anything nice from you. It's, right. I do the dishes for you because I want to show you love. And if I never get anything in return for that, that's okay. Because it was like this whole system of give with expectation and whatever it took to kind of get my own way. So a lot of my marriage was that way. I'd say the last 15 years have been a lot more trying hard to just give because that's what I want to do, because I love her.
Yeah, right. And that's like the love of God. I mean, he's doesn't need us, but he displays love to us and expects nothing in return, and often doesn't get anything in return.
Yes.
And that's God's love. And so initially, that when you're keeping ledger, well, you did this for me, I'm going to do this for you, and you wronged me here, I'm going to wrong you back. 1 Corinthians 13 says that love keeps no record of wrongs.
Yeah.
And we don't have to keep a record of, well, I helped you, and how come I don't see anything in return? Because that expectation is toxic. And I'm with you on that. Like I feel that where I'm wanting to be that servant hearted, just like Jesus, just to serve her because I just serve her and I don't need anything from her. I just need to serve and love because God, that flows through you, but it's unnatural. It's not how we're wired as human beings in our fallen state. Like God has to pour love through you for you to be able to love, like that movie, Fireproof,
Yeah.
like, never leave your partner behind with Kirk Cameron or whatever. Like the love has to flow through you. You have to experience God's love and forgiveness and then have no expectation and just serve and love with nothing in return. So that's great. That's very encouraging. Well, then along the lines of that was, how can a husband best support his wife? So I think you kind of nailed that one on the head right there, is to love that way. But anything else specifically regarding homeschooling? Because a lot of times the moms are doing some of the heavy lifting on the labor of homeschooling the kids, and the dads are the provider and the principal who comes along and kisses the teacher every now and then. But, there's this dichotomy where the two roles are separate. But how can a homeschooling husband best serve his wife kind of in that role of homeschool mom and educator?
It comes down to mature leadership, right? As there was so many times that when Kristen needed me to support her, especially with a young family, like I just didn't get that it was my role to make sure she had all of the tools necessary to be successful. As a president now of an organization, the idea is I help everybody else be successful. When everything goes right, they get all the credit. When everything goes wrong, it's my fault. And that's really that's the way it has to go, right? I mean, and it's the same with homeschools and everything else, is that I'm looking for ways to, how do I help Kristen be more successful? Does she have the tools she needs? Because essentially that's a reflection on me. When my family is doing well and thriving and flourishing, that means I've done well at leading. And, as younger parent, I didn't always get that. And I think that would be my encouragement now, especially in a homeschool environment, is your wife needs the support. She doesn't need fixed. She just needs supported. And, sometimes Kristen would be like, she'd have a problem and I would be like, that's good, because I want to fix it. I want to fix this. So I'm going to fix you. And really all she needed me to do was just shut up and be supportive. And then if there was something she needed at that point, provide it, because that's what she needed, instead of me just overriding,
Yep. Yeah, I listen to Ben Shapiro pretty regularly, and I heard him talk about early days of his marriage. He would just go on and on about how he's going to fix it. Yeah, yeah. And she's like, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen. So they have a pact now in their marriage where he said, look, I need to know before we start, is this a I need to fix it conversation or I need to hear you talk conversation?
Yes.
He's like, it's just I need to hear you talk. And he's like, okay, I just need to know the expectation going in so I can be the ear and be like, okay, sure.
Yep.
I'm not going to try to fix anything because it's just innate in men. Like, oh, there's a problem. I got to fix it. Like our dryer just messed up, 2 days ago, the belt broke. And I'm like, a family of 6 cannot go longer than a day, without so I went to Lowe's, got a belt, put it in, fixed it. I was like, it's, my blood was boiling to fix this problem because I'm not going to a laundromat. So yeah, we're just wired to fix stuff. Yep. And so, that's our nature. So we have to back off and just say, well, I'm here to support. I'm here to give you a crying shoulder, a listening ear, but also, do you sincerely need something? Like, we need to buy MasterBooks curriculum and go on their site and get stuff. Which, by the way, don't you have a sale going on?
Yes.
Is that going on MasterBooks right now?
The discount is 30% right now, so it's one of the best prices that we'll offer. We usually offer a Black Friday or Cyber Monday special as well, but this is definitely one of the best times to get curriculum for the coming year at masterbooks.com.
Cool. And that ends? Does that end today, Friday the 19th?
No, that ends actually May 1st. I mean, it's the end of April. Yeah.
End of April, through the end of April. Okay, so we're going to release this relatively quickly to us talking today on Friday. So that'll give people a week if they want to go check out MasterBooks.
Yep.
So shameless plug. We just put it right there.
That.
All right. Meanwhile, back to the show. So next question. And you touched on this a little bit, but what's the biggest lesson you've learned as a homeschool dad? You mentioned your kids teach you a lot of stuff. So what do you think is one of the biggest lessons that they've taught you?
It's definitely the father's love. Every child is different. I have an adopted son who is special needs, and that I've learned so much through him. We went to another country. We rescued him. We brought him back. We gave him our name. He's had struggles just because of his diagnosis, and so often I'm reminded, man, that's me. Like, Jesus came, he rescued me, brings me back into the Father's home, gives me his name, and then loves me, even though I'm like, we have a book called Born Broken, and it's about the adoption, and the essence of the book is we're all born broken, right? And as God brings us into his family and loves us, he gives us his name, he gives us a share in the inheritance, like all of that, and I'm so undeserving. And it's helped me to be such a better, I think, a godly father, because I have to approach it from, but look how he is with me. How can I approach my son right now? He disciplines me, he chastises me, and he guides me, but it's done with such love and mercy and always open arms. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned. And then as parents, I think we have to also trust that it's the favor of the Lord that makes one truly rich, as Proverbs says, and that we can trust the Lord to direct our children's steps and our steps, right? And even in times when it doesn't necessarily feel like God could possibly be doing something good, that he is. No sorrow is wasted in the kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Amen. Well, that's a beautiful picture. Adoption, the gospel. It's just, a lot of families that adopt, and it is an amazing picture of God's love. Sure. Next question for you. It's regarding the generation we see right now with homeschoolers. Right now, it seems to be there's a trend of people exiting the public school system for academic reasons, or, a couple of years ago it's because of different vaccination reasons or bullying, but oftentimes they don't bring with them that same heart of discipleship. It's more of just a function. It's just a pragmatic reason. I got to get out of this bad situation into something better. But a lot of us have come from the school of thought that it's a relationship of discipleship in your home. You're building a bridge to disciple your kids into a relationship with the Lord. That success is defined as we have a kid that loves the Lord versus we have a kid who got good grades. And so the academic versus spiritual reasons. So what do you see? What is your take on that? What do you see in the generation coming up? Do you see it being shifted away from spiritual things and more towards academics? Or do you feel like there's a resurgence on the rise of more families getting on board with discipling their kids?
So there's definitely a shift. When we came into the homeschool movement, Generation X was homeschooling. The Generation X demographic, do you guys fall into Generation X?
I think I'm barely a millennial. I was born in '82.
Okay.
She was born in
Okay.
'83.
Okay.
So
Generation X, we grew up in more of a, we're very independent. We buck the system. Nobody's going to tell us what to do. We don't allow we were the helicopter parents. Like, we are fully, I'm all out, man. You mess with my kids. I would go beat the bully up at the playground for my kids.
right.
I was never going to let them suffer what I had done, any of these things.
Yeah.
So it was natural that a Gen X would go against the system and kind of push against it and do that. That generation is aging out, and the kids are graduated. Now a lot of their kids are starting to homeschool. And so you have more of the Gen Z starting to homeschool now. And yeah, the motivations, I think, are different, and the way that we operate are different than the next generation. Over the years, and myself included, I do think that there's an evolution, which isn't a good word with MasterBooks, but for this case, I'm going to use it.
A change.
Yeah.
Right.
There's an evolution of a homeschool family. And, however we get here is one thing, but then all of a sudden we get exposed to new thoughts, new ideas, people who are fired up for discipleship for the Lord, who love their kids, who love their wives, love leadership, right? And all of a sudden we start to get inspired, and we start on that journey. And I can remember the homeschool convention where I first, saw the guy's name was Little Bear Wheeler, and he was a man, and he was like, I lead my home, and I love my wife, and I'll pay whatever sacrifice it takes to make sure my family succeeds. And all of a sudden I started being like, hey, I kind of like this. I'm drawn to this. I think we're at the early stages of the next generation coming in. I do think that there's a need for the homeschool movement to have people who are sold out, to be able to say, it's not about homeschooling. It's about discipleship. It's about loving our kids. It's a lifestyle that we live, right?
Amen.
I mean, our family is close, and we thrive together, and that's the lifestyle of homeschooling. Homeschooling is just one term that you would use to describe us, but I think that's coming. So I'm excited for the next generation. I think I'm going to predict revival coming. I think there's a hunger for biblical authority. There's a popular song contestant show on right now, and one of the recent worship leaders sang a song, and he got carried away. Like, revival happens during the show, right? And it was like, I see it coming, and I'm excited because for 20 years, almost 30 years, we've invested in a generation, and it's like dry bones right now. There's not like, well, where's the Spirit? What's happening? It's going to come. And I trust that everything that's been invested into a generation it's sitting there, and the Spirit is going to come in, and we're going to see that generation rise up and revival. I feel it's the cycle and the season that we're going to be in. That's my prediction. So
that's good. Optimistic view.
So in this generation, what do you think, or why do you think MasterBooks works or is so needed for these generations of homeschoolers?
Yeah. So when we were homeschooling, our biggest goal was to stay out of jail, right? I mean, it was, you wanted to make sure your kids were doing pretty much college level work. It's not as necessary now that you have to prove yourself the way we did 20 years ago. But I do think why MasterBooks works is because of the framework of a lot of what Kristen put together. Was she had 9 kids. How do you homeschool 9 kids? So it's homeschool for the real world. It was set up with, here's a daily schedule. Here's daily achievable tasks where, I'm sure your family has used different curriculum where it's like, I have to teach all of these kids all of this, and I spend hours, and now the relationship with my kids is getting destroyed because it's not working for any of us. MasterBooks, I love reading the testimonies of somebody who will grab MasterBooks, bring it into their homeschool, and it's like well, my kids like me again. Like we're actually enjoying schooling, and we can get it done. We actually got a full year of curriculum done, and we're not discouraged in those things. So I think that all plays a really big part in it.
So would you like to dispel any of the big MasterBook questions of like, well, it just doesn't seem like enough, or it's not gentle enough, and why that the way the MasterBooks method is set up is for life to still happen, because life and discipleship really is the goal, and these are tools that help get us there. But I just want to give you an opportunity to dispel some of that stuff.
Absolutely, it's ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
It's ignorance, right? It's because the paradigm that I have is that my kids have to be miserable in order, like, unless you're crying, you're not really doing school. But when you look at like Finland, right? They're ranked far above the US in education. They don't even begin teaching their children to read until they're 7 years old. But what they do is they do a lot of creative play, imagination. They read to their students. Like there's a lot of brain development that's going on. The US education system is like, they want to start at 4 now, where you're teaching abstract thought. Well, the prefrontal cortex isn't even developed enough to be doing some of what we're asking kids to do. And the research and the studies show that when we push our young children that fast, that when they're in grades 4, 5, and 6, that they actually begin to regress. So when someone looks at MasterBooks and says, well, it's too easy. No, it's developmentally appropriate. And if your kid can go farther, do it. Like we always say, curriculum is a tool. You're the carpenter. If you feel your child should be in a grade up, then go a grade up. Nobody's stopping you from that. I do think that there's a lot of, it's kind of, well, we want to be on par with my child is 4, and I really would like them to read because that's going to impress everybody. Some children don't read until they're 7. Some children read when they're 4. Every child is unique. So I think with MasterBooks, when you look at the research supports that. And then let's look at attention spans. So there's research that shows that when beyond 20 minutes, it's actually more like 12, I think. Beyond 20 minutes, the students, it starts to be counterproductive, right? We don't have the attention span. In fact, from the moment I started explaining this, you guys have already had multiple thoughts, and you're like, you're not like, that's just who we are, right?
We're not immune to it. Yeah. Right.
So that's with our kids too. If you don't hit really hard in the first 12 minutes or the first 20 minutes, you can spend hours teaching them algebra when they're 4 years old. That's an option, but it's not going to work. So I think MasterBooks, for people who I love, I'm sure you've seen the post as well, Nereida, that when people are like, I left MasterBooks because I didn't think it's enough. I'm back. I'm sorry that I strayed, all of these things. It's funny.
Prodigal
but a lot of it is just because it works. It's a system that works. And then they're always surprised. My kids took their achievement test, and they were like, 3 grades ahead. Well, because it's intelligent learning. It's not just kind of, it's a little out of the box, but it works.
Mm-hmm. Right. That and I can attest to that, because I was, we were homeschooling for years before MasterBooks, like, it came with like a full curriculum, development. And I was using like God's Design and Pierce putting together unit studies basically from what Answers in Genesis had, and like using all this MasterBook stuff and creating my own stuff. So we've never actually used anything else outside of our kids being in a co-op for our home science other than MasterBooks, Answers in Genesis, same thing for apologetics. But when they started rolling out stuff, I was kind of like hesitant to use like the language arts, because I was like, I don't know what's working. You don't, a seasoned person's like, if it's working, you don't mess with it.
Yeah.
So I was like, but I got these new younger set of children. So I was like, I'm going to try it. And so we started little by little, like with the math, and then we started with the language lessons. And then I started comparing language lessons with like Queen Homeschool or, Simply Charlotte Mason, or maybe some of these like, Abeka and BJU, right? Because they all have their pros and cons, but they're not really made for homeschoolers.
Right.
Like those, like you can say Simply Charlotte Mason and, Queen Homeschool might be, and they're in the Charlotte Mason like umbrella. So I was like, I'm just going to try it. And like my kids love it. And my one son, who's like totally struggling, he can still understand like what parts of speech are and still enjoy the storytelling, even if I have to have him dictate to me his story. But he feels like he's progressing. So that's a win. And then when we've used Horizons, right? I don't know what homeschooler hasn't. It's pretty solid. We've done Saxon. And so we were like, all right, I'm going to try this math, and I'm like, they're newbies. Like, why not? And so I would go through it with them, and my daughter loves it. She did her own little review on our channel for it. But my son, who's just a little bit older than her, did it. And all of his math scores were perfect on the CAT test, like from the 1970s, like perfect. Wow. And so was for language lessons. And so I put that on the Mom's MasterBooks app as like a picture, like, just, is it not enough? Like, everybody always asks that question. And I think we have to get out of the mindset of like, one, trying to prove ourselves, right? It's God who justifies. Like, why are we constantly having to, like, who are we trying to please outside of like what's best for our kids? Like, if we really do care about a Charlotte Mason philosophy of education, you care about the whole child. So that means developmentally, we should care about where they're at. So my son, even though he had trouble like remembering words but he had great handwriting, and he can't really read where he's supposed to be reading, he can still understand parts of speech. He can still narrate back to me. And yet mathematically, he was able to like excel and connect, and we don't have to like drill and kill, because if you can do it 5 times, what does 15 more problems matter?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And then, that can make the difference between we get to go outside and he can draw and create and spend his time, because he's an amazing artist. And it's the one thing he feels good about himself. So it's a different kind of smart than being so academically philosophy driven like my older son. And yet when my youngest son gets to talking about Jesus or the gospel or all this, he's like, yeah, just like in God's story or in one-on-one stories. And it's like all this truth comes out, and it's like, there's people who are not grown who can understand justification or sanctification. Here you are, telling me these things, but you're in language lessons level 3 or, and it's just like, it's amazing. And then to have high schoolers, I kind of made them stop what they were doing because this wasn't available yet. So, but I knew I wanted them to do the Pilgrim's Progress, and my one son was not, the one who redid 9th grade, was not really a fan of like writing strands. So I was like, you know what? We're going to try language lessons 9. And to see the progression, I love that course. I think it's probably one of the strongest MasterBooks courses. Just the way it's laid out, the way you get to study the Pilgrim's Progress. I mean, they did such a great job with the analysis of that and the characters, then the worldview, and you get a little bit of the hems in there, and you still get your grammar. It's like they're not missing it. It's still there. And when you see the progression up, and then the higher level thinking and critical thinking, I think oftentimes people are like, how can I get my kids to think critically? Like, well, you could start with the Proverbs and reading the Bible. That's one step, because that's often like not taken into account. And the Bible helps us think, and we want to be conformed into the image of Christ, and we do that by renewing our mind. And then we get like resources like this where it's the great Christian classics. Like, we just posted our son Jacob, who is the philosopher. He loves that course. And some people will look at it and be like, oh, it's intimidating. It could be dry. It could be the vocabulary is too hard. But it's so challenging, but yet doable each day. So this kid can still work out, he can still write, but he's going so deep. And then he's also doing apologetics in action. And he's also currently doing, origins of life. So if you look at everything they're doing together, it's so deep and thick, and they're not missing anything. They're actually gaining so much more knowledge. And we have to remember that some of the great intellectuals of the past have been Christians. Like, we're not meant to be dumb. We're meant to have an answer. And I think if you just stay the course instead of having like, well, that looks good, that looks good. And I think that's where convictions and goals really come in. And if you stay it, you can see it grow with your child, and that they're not going to miss anything, and they're going to get the important stuff, and it's going to help them teach, and think critically, and then can still have a job, and you can still have family, altar time and prayer times, and pull it all in. Like, I don't think there's anything on the market like Logic or Foundations in Faith. Like, and those two courses, if all of your kids just did those
Yep.
in the upper grades, they would be set for
Yep.
life. I don't know how many times my kids were like, that was a logical fallacy. Did you hear what they just said? Like, and we had Mormons come to the door. And because my kids have done, cult and religion, and that's actually what I'm teaching next year for our co-op. That was just so awesome. And then my son
went on for like an hour.
It went on for an hour.
They just wanted to debate. They just wanted to go back and forth.
And it was so great to like hear them take everything that they have learned, all this reasoning, all this critical thinking, all this defense for the faith, the Bible. And it's like, that you're talking intelligence, because a lot of people don't realize that Mormons restructure history from who the Jewish people are, the Native Americans, right. How they've treated, Latinos and African Americans, and then God himself and God having a beginning. Well, when you have foundations like the Catechism book that just came out and it says, who is God? Well, God is eternal. No one ever created God. And that was like one of the first things my kids could just like go, right to. And, it's so I just think that then when they're asked to put that on paper, like in apologetics in action, what they've learned in language lessons, they carry that over. So you see it in those essays. And if people would just stay committed and hold on to it, they will see the growth. Like it doesn't actually become fluffier, it becomes harder. I think it goes back to historic Christianity, really, right. Where we can take back the reins of like, yeah, we're the ones that like understand true philosophy because we understand the state of man, and we understand the state of man because of the word of God. Yes. And we can, and then being able to give a defense for all this and appreciate creation. Some of the great scientists were young earth creationists, so I can go on and on, but I'm just wanted to give the president
one of our best
I just wanted the president to be able to kind of dispel that. But
for auditioning for top fangirl, I hope that she passed the audition.
For sure.
No.
For sure.
But I wanted to run. I have 6 kids, one's graduated, one's getting ready to graduate this year. So it's kind of fun to say I've done Horizons and Saxons, and my kids still did, and this kid did language lessons, and they all scored. Like I've never had a kid score perfect in math except for our son. And awesome. I'm like, so I'm like, this is, it works. I'm like, and some courses don't work for people. I get that. But to slam a whole place, it's like, just because it didn't work for you or it didn't work in that season of life, because sometimes people need to take seasons or child or just that particular course. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work for any, and I think people should use much more discernment about what they are bringing in their home, because, there's a really popular curriculum out there by Mormons and people think that it's not a big deal, but what's your end goal? They kept trying to align with my son that we believe in the same God. And when my son continually went through and said, but we don't believe in the same God. We don't believe that Jesus and Lucifer were brothers. We don't believe that God was created. We don't believe in celestial beings. And they try to use 2 Peter as a way of saying that there's a spiritual world beforehand. And we're like, no, in context, this is what the Bible means. And this is what it's saying. And then even having a course like Foundations in Faith, where you learn when the books of the Bible were written and why you can trust them. The Mormons try to say that it was like 100 AD before any book of the Bible was written. And my son was like, no, that's inaccurate. And we have creeds and confessions. And when they had to memorize the Nicene Creed, they were able to defend that, like, begotten of God, God of very God. I mean, Israel Wayne did a fantastic job. This is real life. They came to our door. We didn't ask for it.
Yeah. But that's the end goal right there, is to create kids so that when I leave the planet, I've got, and I would just as easily have that same conversation because I'm into apologetics and defending the faith, and I want to win them to Christ, to the true Christ. But God has a date for me to leave the planet, and I will leave and go on to glory. And I've left behind, like, I planted a seed and I grew little arrows and I'm shooting them out in the world, and I've left a legacy behind that they are equipped to defend their faith. They love the Lord. That's the end goal. If they, if they are poor and destitute, but they love the Lord, what's the proverb say? It's better to be like in a house with vegetables and honor than like with meat, but you're a liar or whatever. I'm paraphrasing it. But, I would rather them know the Lord, have the ability to defend their faith and trust him, and live out a godly legacy that way
Yeah,
than
and
anything else.
Well said.
yeah, and like to
Well said.
love. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to like know what they believe and why they believe it. It's so important because at the end of it, my son said, can you be sure you guys are going to heaven? They're like, well, nothing's really sure. There's 3 levels. And if you're good enough to be with where God is. And so he dispelled all of that. And then they said at the end, would you be willing to take this Book of Mormon and study it? And he said, well, do you think that I'll go to heaven? And he was like, no, I don't know. I can't say. And then my son said, well, I'm pretty sure what the Bible says, and I'm certain of my salvation. I'm certain of God's word. So I think I'm going to stick with certainty, and I'm going to pray for you to find certainty. And I was just like, yes, this is what it's about, know? And I'm like, yes.
That's like a mic drop right there. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Like that right there is like why we do what we do.
You're interviewing the wrong person. You need to be interviewing him.
Yeah, we should. How to talk to Mormons. Well, anyways, as we wrap up, we've gone on for about an hour here. You've been very generous with your time, so thank you. Just have one last question, and that's what's the future for Randy Pratt and for MasterBooks, and where can everybody find you and find MasterBooks, and kind of what? I guess a 2-part question, I guess.
Well, definitely the press is continuing to move forward. Our mission statement is to impact eternity. And so, I'm all about that. And Kristen is doing her, she's beginning to launch a couple of businesses as well, serving the homeschool community. And so it's exciting to see her step into that arena. And, anybody can find us. The MasterBooks app is a great place to connect. And it's also masterbooks.com. You can find us there. It's been awesome to connect with you guys. We've connected over the years at Teach Them Diligently. And so, you guys have a special place in our hearts.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. You have impacted us, and MasterBooks has impacted our family to equip us to do what we just described. I mean, it all goes back to a MasterBooks book, How to Raise Godly Children in an Ungodly World, by Ken Ham. That book, and that talk that he gave way back in 2006, I guess it was, changed us. We were just going to be ho-humdrum Christians. And we read that and we said, we have to do family altar time. We have to be conscious discipling of our kids. We've got to be leaning into this. That all happened through your ministry. So thank you. I mean, we wouldn't be who we are if it wasn't for, what your ministry is. So
that's
thanks.
Awesome to hear.
And we definitely appreciate you and, just the teaching chips on Thursday. Like I said, I'm 17 years in, and it feels like I get revived every week.
Thank you.
So I appreciate it.
It's one of those things where it's, Lord, we'll throw it out there, and if it blesses anybody, that's good. And I'm blessed as well by the community, because some of the questions and being able to reflect back is actually pretty helpful, because sometimes I'm like, that's the answer I gave, but is that actually the way that I'm following today? And so sometimes it actually calls me back into you need to align with the principles you declare.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is a MasterBooks YouTube channel and a MasterBooks podcast.
Yep.
Is that right? Yep. So everybody, make sure you go check that out. And there's the MasterBooks app, of course. It's free. You can get it on your device. And make sure that you go over to MasterBooks channel. They've got great resources there to check them out, masterbooks.com. We will do our best to put links in the description for all the things we talked about today, the different books, the different resources.
Awesome.
And once again, Randy Pratt, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.